You came to see. I couldn't answer. My throat felt like it was closing. You chose this. The house began to change. The walls shifted, the floor buckled, and the mirror warped, pulling at my reflection like it was alive. I could see something in the glass, dozens of faces, all staring back at me. Some were crying, some were screaming, but all of them had hollow eyes. They were its victims. And then I saw my own face in the mirror, distorted and wrong. My eyes were hollow too. Now, that you are interested in this story, let's start this story from the beginning. Part 1, The First Assignment. Posted by you/Lena Park Investigates 2 weeks ago. Hi, everyone. I've been lurking here for years, but this is my first post. I figured this subreddit might be interested in what I'm working on. I'm a freelance journalist, and right now, I'm working on a documentary series about haunted locations in the US. It's been weird, to say the least. Let me back up a bit. I've always been fascinated by the paranormal. My obsession started when I was a kid after something awful happened in my family. My uncle, who I adored, died in what everyone called a freak accident. He was house-sitting for a family friend in a tiny, creepy Victorian home in Massachusetts. One night, he called my mom, completely freaked out, saying he heard whispers coming from the attic. He kept insisting that he wasn't alone. My mom chalked it up to stress or maybe a prank, but the next morning, the police found him dead. The official cause? A heart attack. But the weird part? The coroner said his face was frozen in a look of sheer terror. Even as a kid, I couldn't shake the feeling that something scared him to death. That house was the first haunted place I ever heard about, and I've been chasing ghost stories ever since. I studied journalism in college and started a YouTube channel where I interviewed people about their experiences with the supernatural. Most of it was harmless fun. But recently, my work has started to feel darker. I've been visiting and documenting some pretty infamous places for this series. I interview witnesses, dive into local legends, and explore the sites myself. At first, it was just spooky stories, nothing more. But lately, I've noticed things I can't explain. It started small. My car keys would disappear, only to show up in places I'd never leave them. Footage from my interviews would have strange glitches, like static, or shapes moving in the background. And then, 3 nights ago, someone, or something, knocked on my apartment door at 3 a.m. When I opened it, there was no one there. I know how it sounds. I thought maybe I was just tired or stressed. But every time I brushed it off, something else would happen. It's like whatever this is, it's following me. Which brings me to my first stop for the series, the Evergreen Motel. This place has a reputation. Located off a lonely stretch of highway, it looks like your average roadside dump. But over the years, multiple guests have checked in and never left. The motel's most infamous story is about a traveling salesman in the 1980s who told staff he kept seeing a dark figure standing outside his window. The night before he was supposed to check out, he hung himself in his room. His wasn't the only death. There've been at least 5 other suicides there. Locals say the place is cursed. Some even believe a shadowy figure stalks the guests, driving them to insanity. So, of course, I booked a room. I'll be spending 2 nights at the Evergreen Motel, interviewing staff and guests, if I can find any. Word is, most of the rooms are empty. I'll also be filming my own experiences. I'll update you all with what I find. Honestly, I'm excited, but also a little nervous. This is the first time I've really felt like something is watching me. I'll let you know how it goes. Wish me luck, I think I'll need it. Edit, just got here, and wow, this place is even creepier than I expected. I'll post more soon. Part 2, The Motel of Shadows. Posted by you/Lena Park Investigates 12 days ago. Hey, everyone. I'm back with an update on my stay at the Evergreen Motel. Let's just say I've had a very eventful first night here, and I'm not entirely sure how I feel about staying another night. I'll start from the beginning. When I arrived yesterday, the place looked worse than I expected. The paint on the sign is peeling, and the neon light that says vacancy flickers on and off, casting a weird red glow over the parking lot. There's a gas station next door with boarded-up windows, and the highway is completely silent at night, no cars, no trucks. Just nothing. It's like this stretch of road exists in its own little pocket of nowhere. The lobby wasn't much better. The woman at the front desk, Bonnie, looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. She barely made eye contact and didn't smile once while checking me in. When I told her I was here to learn about the motel's history, she froze for a second and then muttered, "There's nothing to tell." But as she handed me the key, she added under her breath, "Just don't open the curtains at night." I laughed nervously, thinking she was trying to mess with me. She didn't laugh back. I'm in room 6, which, according to my research, is where the traveling salesman died. The room is as dingy as you'd expect, stained carpet, a lumpy bed, and a TV from the 90s that buzzes when you turn it on. The air smells faintly of mildew and something metallic. I'm trying not to think about what that last smell might be. After unpacking, I decided to walk around and take some photos of the property. The whole place feels off. It's hard to explain, but it's like the air is heavier here. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but then I noticed something strange. All the other rooms had their curtains drawn, completely shut. Not a sliver of light or movement behind them. Bonnie told me there were a few other guests staying here, but I haven't seen a single soul, no cars in the lot, no sounds from the rooms. Nothing. At around 11 p.m., I decided to review the footage I'd shot earlier in the day. That's when things started to get weird. As I scrolled through the photos, I noticed a dark smudge in the corner of almost every shot. It wasn't on the lens, I checked that. But in every photo, this smudge was there, almost like a shadow, except there was nothing in the frame that could have cast it. I brushed it off and got ready for bed. Big mistake. At 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of knocking. It was soft at first, like someone lightly tapping on the door. I froze, thinking it was just a dream, but then it got louder. Bang. 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 I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. My heart was racing as I approached the door. "Hello?" I called out. No response. Bonnie's words came rushing back, "Don't open the curtains at night." Of course, I didn't listen. I pulled the curtain back just a fraction, enough to see outside. The parking lot was empty, bathed in that eerie red glow from the flickering sign. But there was something standing just at the edge of the lot. It wasn't a person. It was a shadow, tall, thin, and impossibly dark, like it was sucking the light out of the air around it. It wasn't moving, just standing there, facing my room. I stumbled back from the window, my hands shaking so badly I dropped my phone. By the time I worked up the courage to look again, it was gone. I didn't sleep after that. I sat on the bed with the lights on, clutching the tiny motel Bible like it was a shield. I kept telling myself I imagined it, that my brain was playing tricks on me. But when I checked my phone this morning, I noticed something I can't explain. In the footage I shot last night, there's a moment, right before I dropped the phone, where you can clearly see the figure outside. It's only there for a second, but it's real. I showed Bonnie the footage this morning. She just shook her head and said, "I told you to keep the curtains shut." She refused to say anything else. I have one more night here, but honestly, I'm not sure if I can stay. The air feels heavier today, like the place is waiting for something. I'll post another update tomorrow, assuming I survive the night. Edit, just went back through my photos, and that shadow in the corner. It's not a smudge. It's a figure. Part 3, The Farmhouse Haunting. Hosted by you/Lena Park investigates 10 days ago. Hi, everyone. I barely made it through my second night at the Evergreen Motel. I'll update you on that soon, but first, I wanted to share my next stop, an abandoned farmhouse that's been at the center of one of the strangest hauntings I've ever researched. If I sound a little off, it's because I haven't slept much since I left the motel. Something feels wrong. Anyway, back to the farmhouse. The farmhouse belonged to the Thatcher family, who lived there for decades before fleeing in the 1970s. The story goes that their youngest son, Jacob, began talking to someone who lived in the attic. At first, his parents thought he'd made up an imaginary friend, but then objects started moving on their own. Plates would fly off the shelves. Lights would flicker, even when the power was cut. The worst came late one night, when Jacob started screaming. His parents rushed to his room and found him covered in scratches, deep, jagged ones, like claw marks. He said his friend was angry because the family wanted to leave. The Thatchers didn't wait to find out what would happen next. They packed up and left that same night, abandoning the house and everything inside. Local teens have called it the Scratch House ever since. People say you can still hear Jacob's screams in the middle of the night. The house is a wreck now. It's hidden deep in the woods, far from any main roads. By the time I found it, my car was bouncing over potholes on what barely counted as a dirt path. The air felt heavy, just like at the motel. The moment I stepped out of the car, I got chills, and it wasn't just the cold. The place looks like something out of a horror movie. The windows are shattered, the roof is caving in, and the front door hangs open like a mouth ready to swallow you whole. But the weirdest thing? It still felt lived in. The porch had a rocking chair on it, swaying gently, even though there wasn't a breeze. I took a deep breath, grabbed my camera, and went inside. The house is almost completely untouched since the Thatchers left. There's furniture still in place, clothes hanging in closets, even dishes in the sink. Everything is covered in a thick layer of dust, but it's like the family just vanished. The weirdness started almost immediately. In the living room, I found a framed photo of the Thatchers on the mantel. But someone, or something, had scratched out all their faces. Deep gouges ran through the glass, like claws had raked across it. Then I heard footsteps upstairs. They were slow, deliberate. At first, I thought maybe another urban explorer had beaten me here. But when I called out, there was no answer. The footsteps stopped for a moment, and then I heard something much worse, a child's laughter. It wasn't playful. It was high-pitched and sharp, echoing through the empty house. I froze, my heart hammering. I wanted to run, but I forced myself to move toward the stairs. The attic door was open when I got up there. The laughter stopped the moment I stepped inside. The attic was almost pitch black, lit only by the faint glow from my phone. There were toys scattered everywhere, wooden blocks, a stuffed rabbit, a spinning top. All of them looked ancient, like they hadn't been touched in decades. But one thing stood out. In the middle of the room was a doll. It was propped up on a tiny chair, its head tilted to the side. Its glass eyes stared right at me. But the part that really got me? Its mouth was open, stuffed with yellow teeth that didn't belong in a doll. They were human. As I stared, I heard something rustle behind me. When I turned around, there was nothing there, but the attic door slammed shut with a bang. I ran. I don't even remember how I got out of the house, I just know I didn't stop until I was back in my car. Later that night, I reviewed the footage from my camera. That's when I saw it. There's a figure in the corner of the attic, barely visible in the shadows. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but when I paused the video, I could see it clearly, a tall, thin shape with hollow eyes. It wasn't just watching me, it was reaching toward me. I'm starting to think this figure isn't tied to one place. It's been in every location I've visited so far, lurking just out of sight. I don't know what it wants. I have one more stop lined up, an abandoned asylum. I should feel scared, but honestly, I think I'm too tired to care. I'll update you soon. Edit, just check the footage again. The figure's head turns to follow me as I leave. How did I not notice that before? Part 4, The Asylum. Posted by you/Lena Park investigates 8 days ago. Hi, everyone. I promised an update, and here it is. I spent last night in an abandoned asylum, and I'm honestly still shaking as I write this. I thought I'd gotten used to creepy places after the motel and the farmhouse, but this was something else entirely. The asylum is called Briarwood State Hospital. It was shut down in the 1960s after a string of scandals, patient abuse, mysterious deaths, and rumors of experimental treatments that bordered on torture. It's been abandoned ever since, but locals swear it's haunted. They say you can hear screams echoing through the halls at night and see shadows moving where no one should be. Perfect, right? I arrived just before sunset. The building loomed over me, its windows shattered, ivy crawling up its crumbling brick walls. It felt alive in a way I can't explain, like it was watching me. I forced myself to go in. The front doors creaked open, revealing a dark, empty lobby. My flashlight barely cut through the shadows, but I could see enough: broken furniture, graffiti-covered walls, and piles of debris. The air was damp and cold, carrying a faint, metallic smell that reminded me of blood. I started filming right away, narrating as I explored. The place was a labyrinth of decaying hallways and collapsing ceilings, but the farther I went, the worse it got. The walls were covered in scratches, some of them so deep it was like someone, or something, had clawed at them with inhuman strength. In one of the patient rooms, I found an old wheelchair tipped over on its side. There were handprints smeared across the walls, like someone had been frantically trying to escape. Then I heard it, a low, guttural moan coming from somewhere deep in the building. I froze, my heart racing. The sound echoed through the empty halls, growing louder and closer. I wanted to turn back, but I knew I couldn't, not yet. I followed the sound to the basement, where the asylum's old morgue was located. The door was heavy and rusted, but I managed to push it open. Inside, the room was freezing. The walls were lined with body drawers, and an old autopsy table stood in the center, covered in dust and grime. That's when I saw my name. It was scratched into the autopsy table, deep and jagged. Lena Park. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence, that someone had been here before me and done it as a prank. But as I stared, I realized something: the scratches were fresh. I was still trying to process it when the lights went out. Total darkness. I could hear my own breathing, sharp and shallow, and then something else, a faint whisper, too quiet to make out. It wasn't just one voice. It was a chorus, overlapping and growing louder, until the room was filled with this horrible, inhuman sound. My flashlight wouldn't turn on, but the red light on my camera was still blinking. Through the lens, I could see something in the corner of the room. It was tall and thin, with hollow eyes and limbs that looked too long for its body. It was watching me. I bolted. I didn't care where I was going, I just needed to get out. The whispers followed me, growing louder and angrier. The hallways seemed to stretch endlessly, twisting and turning in ways that didn't make sense. I swear I saw the figure ahead of me at one point, just standing there, waiting. But when I blinked, it was gone. Eventually, I found the front doors and burst outside, gasping for air. The building loomed behind me, silent and still, like nothing had happened. But when I checked my camera, the footage was there. The thing I saw in the morgue. It wasn't alone. There were others in the shadows, watching me, following me through the halls. And when I zoomed in on one of the frames, I saw something that made my blood run cold. It wasn't just following me, it was smiling. I don't know what this thing is, but it's not tied to one location. It's been in every place I've visited, getting closer each time. And the worst part? I don't think it's done with me yet. I'm heading to my next location tomorrow. This time, it's an archive, a collection of paranormal records run by a researcher who's agreed to help me. Maybe he'll have some answers. I hope so, because I don't know how much more of this I can take. Edit, I just noticed something in the last few seconds of my footage. The camera turns toward me, but I didn't move it. And in the reflection of the autopsy table, you can see the figure standing right behind me. Part 5, The Archive of the Dead. Posted by you/Lena Park investigates 6 days ago. Hey, everyone. I'm starting to think this might have been a mistake. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. It feels like I've stepped into something far bigger than I ever imagined, and I'm not sure I'll make it out the other side. I spent last night at a place called the Carter Paranormal Archive. It's an underground collection of records, objects, and case files documenting unexplained phenomena across the US. Think of it as a library for the supernatural, except this library feels like it's alive. The archive is run by Dr. Malcolm Carter, a researcher who's been investigating the paranormal for decades. I'd reached out to him weeks ago, and when I told him about the figure I'd been seeing in my footage, he agreed to meet with me. There's something you need to know, he said over the phone. But you won't like it. The archive itself is hidden beneath an old church in a small Midwestern town. When I arrived, the building looked abandoned, but Dr. Carter was waiting for me by the side entrance. He's older, maybe in his 60s, with a sharp, serious demeanor that made it clear he doesn't mess around. As he led me inside, he started talking about my work. "You're very brave, you know," he said. "Or very foolish. Most people wouldn't chase what you're chasing." "What do you mean?" I asked. He didn't answer. The archive was enormous, much bigger than I expected. Rows of metal shelves stretched as far as I could see, filled with dusty boxes, binders, and strange artifacts. The air was cold and dry, and every sound echoed through the space, making it feel like the building was listening. Dr. Carter took me to a small table in the corner, where a stack of yellowed files was waiting. "This is everything I've been able to find on your companion," he said. "Companion?" He nodded grimly. "The figure you've been seeing. It's known by many names, but the one that comes up most often is the witness. It appears to people who seek out the paranormal, feeding on their curiosity and fear. The more you investigate, the stronger it becomes." I felt my stomach drop. "So, it's real?" "Oh, it's very real," he said, sliding one of the files toward me. "And you're not the first person it's followed." The file contained old photos and newspaper clippings, each one tied to someone who'd mysteriously disappeared after investigating hauntings, cryptids, or other supernatural phenomena. The photos were the worst. In almost every one, there was a blurry, shadowy figure in the background, just like the one in my footage. "It attaches itself to its victims," Dr. Carter explained. "Once it's chosen you, it doesn't let go. Not until it's finished with you." I flipped through the file, my hands shaking. One of the clippings mentioned a man named James Lark, a paranormal investigator who vanished in the 1980s. His last known words were scrawled in a notebook found at the site of his disappearance: "It's watching me. It knows I can see it. I can't stop now. Can't stop now," I muttered, almost to myself. "That's what it wants, isn't it? For me to keep going." Dr. Carter nodded. "The more you pursue it, the closer it gets. But stopping isn't always an option. By the time most people realize what's happening, it's already too late." I asked him if anyone had ever survived. His answer didn't give me much hope. "A few," he said. "But they're never the same. They're broken. Hollowed out. It takes something from you, even if it doesn't kill you." We talked for hours, going over case after case. Dr. Carter showed me photos of sites where the witness had appeared, burned-out houses, overgrown cemeteries, empty fields. Each place was tied to someone who disappeared or died under mysterious circumstances. The more I learned, the more I felt like I was suffocating. This thing had been following me since the motel, maybe even longer. And now it felt closer than ever. Before I left, Dr. Carter gave me one final warning. "Don't let it take you," he said. "Whatever you do, don't let it into your mind. That's how it wins." I was about to ask what he meant when the lights in the archive flickered. For a moment, everything went dark. I heard Dr. Carter gasp, followed by a sound like heavy footsteps echoing through the room. When the lights came back on, he was gone. I called out for him, but there was no response. The table where we'd been sitting was empty, except for one thing, his glasses, lying shattered on the floor. I ran. I'm back at a motel now, not the Evergreen, thank God. But I haven't been able to sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see the witness. It's standing just outside the edge of my vision, waiting for me to notice it. There's one more place I need to visit. A burned-down church in the middle of nowhere. Dr. Carter's files mentioned it as a site where the witness has been seen before. I'm not sure I'll make it back from this one. Edit, I found something else in the files. A photo of a girl at her uncle's funeral, me. It's dated years before I started this project. In the background, there's a shadowy figure with hollow eyes. Part 6, The Church That Vanished. Posted by you/Lena Park Investigates 4 days ago. Hi, everyone. I don't even know how to start this. I've written and deleted this post about a dozen times, trying to make sense of what happened. I'm starting to think I'm not supposed to understand it, or that understanding it would only make things worse. Last night, I visited St. Vincent's Chapel, the burned-down church I mentioned in my last post. The files Dr. Carter left behind called it the epicenter. If the witness has a home, this is it. The chapel is in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dense forest. According to the files, it burned down over a century ago during a service. The congregation was trapped inside, and no one survived. Witnesses said the fire started without warning, but the strange part. When rescuers arrived, there were no bodies, just ashes. Locals claim the area has been cursed ever since. Animals avoid it. GPS won't work near it. And anyone who ventures too close hears faint hymns in the air, like the congregation is still there, singing in unison. It was dark by the time I reached the site. I parked my car at the edge of the woods and hiked the rest of the way. The trail was almost non-existent, swallowed up by the forest. The air was so cold it stung my lungs, and every sound, the crunch of leaves under my boots, the distant hoot of an owl, made me jump. Finally, I saw it, the ruins of the chapel. There wasn't much left, just the stone foundation and the charred remnants of what had once been walls. The altar was still there, though, a jagged piece of blackened wood standing defiantly in the center. The moment I stepped onto the foundation, the air changed. It became heavy, oppressive, like something was pressing down on my chest. The forest went completely silent. No wind, no animals, nothing. It was as if the world had been muted. I started filming, narrating as I walked through the ruins. Every step felt wrong, like I was trespassing somewhere I didn't belong. Then I heard it. A faint hymn, carried on the wind. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but it grew louder the closer I got to the altar. It was beautiful and haunting, the kind of melody that sticks to your bones. I couldn't make out the words, but the voices sounded, distorted. Like they were coming from underwater. As I reached the altar, I saw something carved into the stone, "The witness is coming." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the camera. I felt like I was being watched, not just by one thing, but by many. Shadows flickered at the edge of my vision, moving in ways that didn't make sense. I wanted to leave, but my legs wouldn't move. It was like the chapel was holding me there, forcing me to stay. Then the singing stopped. I looked around, panicked, trying to figure out where it had gone. That's when I saw them. Figures. Dozens of them, standing in the ruins, their faces turned toward me. They were nothing but shadows, their features blurred and indistinct, but their eyes, God, their eyes, were bright and hollow, glowing like embers in the dark. And they were all watching me. I tried to run, but I couldn't move. My body felt frozen, rooted to the ground. The figures started to close in, their movements slow and deliberate, as if they had all the time in the world. One of them stepped forward, taller than the others. Its hollow eyes burned into mine, and I felt something inside me unravel. It was like it was looking through me, peeling away everything I thought I was. And then it spoke. Its voice wasn't loud, but it echoed in my head, filling every corner of my mind. "Why do you seek us?" I don't know," I stammered. My voice sounded small and distant, like it didn't belong to me. "You do." I tried to look away, but I couldn't. Its gaze held me in place, stripping away every thought, every defense. I felt exposed, like it could see every mistake I'd ever made, every fear I'd ever felt. "You are curious," it said. "And your curiosity will destroy you." The shadows closed in, their glowing eyes surrounding me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. I woke up on the ground outside the ruins, my camera still clutched in my hands. The sun was rising, casting a weak light through the trees. I don't remember leaving the chapel. I don't remember how I got there. But when I checked my footage, I saw everything. The figures. The eyes. The thing that spoke to me. It's all there. And at the very end of the video, there's a frame that makes my blood run cold. It's me. Standing in the middle of the chapel, surrounded by the shadows. But my eyes, they're hollow, just like theirs. I don't know what's happening to me, but I don't think I can stop it. There's one last place I need to go. A house where the witness supposedly manifests in full form. I'm not sure I'll make it back, but if this is my last post, thank you for reading. Edit, just checked my phone. There's a voice memo I don't remember recording. It's me, whispering, it's watching. It's always watching. Part 7, The Connection Revealed. Posted by you/Lena Park Investigates 2 days ago. Hi, everyone. I feel like I'm losing pieces of myself with each passing day. I don't even know if writing this post is helping anymore, or if it's just feeding it. I've spent the last 2 days combing through Dr. Carter's files, the footage from my investigations, and my own memories. And now, I know. I know what the witness is. I've been seeing this thing since I was a kid. It's been in the background of my life, always watching. I didn't recognize it at first, not when I saw the shadow in my uncle's house, or when I spotted that blurry figure in the old family photos. But now that I've seen it clearly, I can't stop seeing it. It's there, in every moment I've ever questioned, every flicker of movement I ignored. And the worst part? I think it's been waiting for me. Dr. Carter's notes are a puzzle, scattered and incomplete, but one thing is clear, the witness doesn't just appear randomly. It chooses people, people like me. People who ask too many questions, who dig too deep, who can't leave well enough alone. Its victims are investigators, journalists, curious minds who try to uncover the truth about the supernatural. And it doesn't just watch them, it follows them, learns from them, feeds on them. The more they search for answers, the closer it gets. I spent hours trying to piece everything together, and as I did, the memories started coming back. The time I stayed late at school as a kid, convinced I'd seen something moving in the empty hallway. The night I heard whispers in my apartment when I first started my YouTube channel. The way I've always felt like someone was standing just behind me when I was working late. This thing has been with me for years, growing stronger every time I looked for it without realizing I was doing so. It's been leading me here, to this moment. And now, I don't think it will let me stop. The scariest part is the footage. I've been going through all the videos I've taken during this project. At first, I thought the witness only appeared at specific locations, tied to certain events. But it's in every clip. Every single one. It's in the background of the motel footage, barely visible in the corner of the window. It's in the farmhouse attic, watching from the shadows. It's in the reflection of the autopsy table at the asylum. And it's in the files Dr. Carter left behind. There's a photo of a man standing in front of a burned-out house, one of the witness's victims. In the background, there's a shadowy figure. Next to it is a blurry shape that looks eerily familiar. It looks like me. I don't know what this means. Did it already take me? Am I part of its chain of victims now, doomed to lead it to others? Or is this something else? I've spent so much of my life chasing the supernatural, trying to understand it, to document it. And now I'm starting to think that's exactly what it wanted. This thing doesn't just follow people like me, it uses us. We become part of its story, its web, luring others in. Every question I've asked, every piece of evidence I've uncovered, has only made it stronger. It's always watching. And now, I can feel it getting closer. Tomorrow, I'm going to the last location in Dr. Carter's files, a house in the middle of the woods where the witness supposedly manifests in full form. This is where it ends, or where it finally takes me. If I don't post again, you'll know what happened. But before I go, I need to say this: if you're reading this, if you've followed my posts, please stop. Don't look for it. Don't try to find the answers. I think that's what it wants. I don't know if I can stop it, but I'll try. Edit, just checked my latest footage. In the last frame, right before I turned off the camera, the witness looks directly at the lens. It's smiling. Part 8, The Final Revelation. Posted by you/Lena Park investigates 16 hours ago. This is it. The end of the road. If you're reading this, it means I've made it to the final location. I don't know if I'll make it out, but I've left this post scheduled to publish, just in case. The house is deep in the woods, miles away from the nearest town. It doesn't appear on any maps, and I only found it thanks to coordinates scrawled in the margins of Dr. Carter's notes. Even Google Earth doesn't show anything but trees where the house should be. It took me hours to find it. The dirt road leading here was almost completely overgrown, and my car couldn't make it through the thick underbrush. I walked the rest of the way, following a trail that felt too deliberate to be natural. And then I saw it. The house. It looks like it's been standing here for centuries, untouched by time. The windows are broken, and the wood is dark with rot, but it feels alive. The air around it is heavy, and the forest is unnaturally silent. No birds. No insects. Just the sound of my own breathing. The door was wide open, as if it was waiting for me. Inside, it's worse than I imagined. The house is a maze of narrow hallways and crumbling rooms, but it doesn't feel abandoned. There are no signs of nature reclaiming the space, no dust, no cobwebs. It's as if the house has been preserved for a single purpose. And it's cold. So cold it hurts to breathe. I've been exploring for hours, trying to make sense of this place. The walls are covered in strange carvings, symbols I don't recognize, etched deep into the wood. Some of them are familiar from Dr. Carter's files, but others feel ancient, like they're older than language itself. At the center of the house is a single room, empty except for a mirror. The mirror is enormous, nearly touching the ceiling. Its frame is carved with the same symbols that cover the walls, and the glass is cracked, distorting my reflection. I can't explain it, but the moment I stepped into the room, I felt like I wasn't alone. I turned on my camera, but the red light wouldn't blink. The battery died the moment I entered the room. That's when I saw it. Not in the mirror. Behind me. The witness. It was standing in the doorway, taller than I remembered, its hollow eyes burning into me. Its presence was overwhelming, like gravity had shifted in the room. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It spoke, its voice low and resonant, echoing in my head. "You came to see." I couldn't answer. My throat felt like it was closing. "You chose this." The house began to change. The walls shifted, the floor buckled, and the mirror warped, pulling at my reflection like it was alive. I could see something in the glass, dozens of faces, all staring back at me. Some were crying, some were screaming, but all of them had hollow eyes. They were its victims. And then I saw my own face in the mirror, distorted and wrong. My eyes were hollow too. "You will join them," it said. The room collapsed into darkness. I could feel it wrapping around me, pulling me into the mirror, into it. Memories flashed before my eyes, not just mine, but ours. Every victim, every moment of fear and despair it had ever consumed. I felt my mind unraveling. It was taking everything, my curiosity, my fear, my life, and leaving nothing behind. But then I remembered Dr. Carter's words, "Don't let it into your mind." I fought back. I don't know how, but I focused on one thought, one memory that it couldn't take from me, my uncle. I thought about his laugh, his kindness, the way he used to let me stay up late to watch scary movies. I held on to that memory like a lifeline. The darkness recoiled. The witness screamed, its voice shattering the mirror. The faces in the glass disappeared, and the room erupted in light. And then, I was outside. I don't remember how I got out, but the house was gone. The forest was quiet again, and the air felt lighter. I staggered back to my car and drove until the trees disappeared behind me. I don't know what happened back there, or why it let me go. Maybe it's not finished with me yet. But I'll tell you this, I'm done. No more investigations. No more hauntings. Whatever answers I was looking for, they're not worth the cost. If you've been following my posts, I hope you'll listen to me now. Stop looking. Stop chasing. Let it go. Because if you don't, it will find you. This is my last post. Thank you for reading. Edit. Before I left, I took one last photo of the forest. I just checked my phone, and there's something in the distance, tall, thin, and watching me. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos. Also, leave your comments and criticisms on this video.